Hello, good afternoon. My name is John Lehman, and I'd like to welcome you to Survey Magazine's webinar series. The title of today's webinar is The Secret Sauce, Creativity Plus Innovative Solutions. Today's event is sponsored by Paradigm Sample. Before we get started, I want to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's session. Throughout the presentation, we encourage you to interact with our speaker by typing questions and comments using the questions panel on the right side of your screen. We will be collecting questions and comments during the presentation and conducting a question and answer period after today's presentation. If you'd like to join the conversation on Twitter, the hashtag is #surveywebinar. The Twitter handle for today's guest is @paradigm_sample. We'd love to have you connect with us on Twitter and keep the conversation going beyond today's event. Also, we are recording today's session and we'll make a link to the recording available to you within 48 hours of the end of our presentation today. Now on to today's event. Today's presenter is Seema Vasa, founder and chief evangelist officer at Paradigm Sample. A seasoned entrepreneur and leading expert in mobile data collection, Seema has a deep and long-standing experience building and growing market research businesses. In 2009, she was senior partner at Momentum Market Intelligence, president of NPD Tech World at the NPD Group, and vice president of technology division at NPD before joining. Seema was a program manager at the IBM Market Intelligence Group who was responsible for all research related to PC servers. A former member of the Young Presidents Organization, Vasa holds an MBA in finance from NYU, Stern School of Business, and a BS degree in marketing from Drexel University. I'd like to be the first to welcome Seema to today's event and turn the program over to her now. Seema, the floor is yours.
Thanks, John. Thank you for having us here today. I'm happy and excited. As John mentioned, I'm one of the founders of Paradigm Sample and Chief Evangelist Officer of Paradigm, which basically means that I get to talk about all the cool stuff that we're doing in terms of helping our clients in the world of data collection. I wanted to share with you the reason that we decided to approach the webinar the way we did was we believe that there's a huge opportunity in data collection to implement creative solutions and not necessarily just drive traffic to areas where people need completes. So from our perspective, we believe that our goal is to help our clients understand and stay ahead of the curve to enable them to maintain their competitive position in the marketplace. The goal for today is to share with you 2 case studies that we've done for clients that we've used out-of-the-box solutions, and hopefully you'll get some ideas that might spark some interest for your own business or your own research approaches and methodology, and obviously ask questions and gain a deeper understanding of the case studies we present today. Before I go forward to presenting the case studies, I did want to share just a little bit of background on Paradigm. We're founded in 2009, and we have a broad access to respondents, over 10 million respondents worldwide. We have our own proprietary panel, which boasts about 650,000 panelists. And you can see how many different types of surveys we've completed and questions we've answered. We focus both on B2B as well as consumer research. We have 4 offices, and our headquarters is in New York. With our office reach being global, we have the opportunity to provide coverage across 7 days a week and 24 hours a day. And we do specialize in collecting data across a broad range of countries. Okay, moving on to our case study. Our first case study is about a mobile app company that's main focus is to help their clients tailor and best design apps for their consumers. In doing so, they struggled a lot in terms of trying to get the right type of engagement and access of different consumer groups. So when we sat down, here's what we learned specifically. The good news is that they had really good positive access to getting consumers to initially download the app from the iTunes store. The challenge was they had high abandonment rate, nearly 35%. As a result, their time in field took many, many weeks longer than they desire. And really, it was a challenge for them to manage client expectations and be able to stay on top or ahead of the curve in terms of what the clients were looking for. Put a ton of pressure in terms of what they needed to get done in a short amount of time post-data collection. One of the ways they managed the problem is they used multiple sample providers, hoping that in order to compensate for the dropout rate, they could at least make sure they had enough traffic and completes and downloads going in through the project. As you can imagine, it created a ton of inefficiency for the project managers to manage such a multitude of panel companies at the same time. This all led to really concerning, I wouldn't say necessarily poor quality, but it was not as optimal as they would have liked it to be. They wanted to have a more streamlined process that had more efficient approaches and yielded better quality data. The cool part was that we actually took the time to sit down and really understand what their needs were. This was not a transactional relationship where we just said, how many completes do you need, and we'll get it done. It was more about a conversation and understanding where their pain points were. As we learned about their challenges, we actually decided and agreed to some basic tenets of the project. Number one was trust. Trust was not just for the client, but it was also for the respondent. We wanted to kind of look at this from a long-term perspective and not necessarily just from a project-to-project basis, because after all, we'd like to build long-term relationships with our clients. The second piece was we really wanted to create some efficiency for our clients in terms of devising the right solution. We didn't think it made sense for a project manager to be managing so many panel partners at the same time and also managing the project itself. We wanted to ensure that we used an approach that created efficiency and allowed our client to get more time. And obviously, the most important, it was critical for us to be able to have sound quality, ultimately yield the results that our client desired. Okay, so let's go forward with trust. This is really important in terms of gaining the trust of respondents. We believed that if we did not, again, look at this as a project-by-project basis, but really looked at this project as a solution that said, let's build a virtual community. Let's get people who actually understand and are conscious of the tasks they need to do to be able to complete a project, not one time, but repeatedly over time, then we'd gain better results. So outside of a project, Paradigm went about and built a virtual community of multiple consumers that represented a broad swath of people. Again, we took this out of the traditional kind of factory, if you will, of data collection. We put aside the cookie cutter approach of communication, and we really looked at different pieces of communication that optimized engagement with consumers. The second piece was we also know historically that we know how consumers and different groups respond online. And we understood that our client wanted a representative group of desired demographics. Understanding that, we actually over-recruited for segments, predicting how they would behave. So when an actual project came about, we actually had the demographics there aligned to what was needed, and we could actually project the end in mind by over-recruiting certain segments within the virtual community. The other piece is we also wanted to infuse technology into the process and create some efficiency in communication. So we actually created a dashboard where a client could look at progress real time at any given time to understand what their virtual community was comprised of. And here is just a snapshot of what that looks like. But we actually developed a portal where they could go in and look at a range of different demographics to see what was happening. And last but not least, we created automatic quality checks. We did this here even before recruitment, before we recruited for the virtual community through our standard data quality checks, but thereafter we did additional automated data quality checks. So what were the results? Prior to building the virtual community, as you would recall, we had a 35% abandonment rate. We actually could reduce that to 10%. So this in itself improved the quality right from reducing that abandonment rate. We reduced field time for specific studies from weeks to days. And so again, our client was put in a position of strength, because not only were they reducing the abandonment rate, they could get the data and insights in time to deliver to the client and provide value in a timely manner. We actually reduced, the client reduced the number of panel partners, and in conjunction also leveraged some of our quality measures that aided in better quality. And the best result of the quality, was they essentially were able to provide a balanced representative sample of the audience they needed. And they told us repeatedly that their client had indicated this is the best research, the best quality research they had provided on these types of studies. So overall, it was proven to be a success. We continue to grow this relationship with our client and build out additional groups of people that qualify for ongoing studies. The second case study is a 52-week advertising effectiveness tracker. On the onset, it seems pretty basic and simple, but I'll dig into the details and share with you some of the challenges and opportunities that presented themselves during the study. There were two markets, two segments, test and control, and as you can see from the cities listed here, they're not your tier 1 cities. So in and itself, there's some smaller DMAs that we needed to sample. The client was very keen on ensuring that any results that they saw in the changes within the test markets were truly driven by market changes, by testing the advertising, versus any change in sample composition. And they wanted to ensure this by managing the study to very strict weekly quotas. Age, gender, income, and also overall perception of the brand that we were testing. This all sounds great, but they wanted to do this on a week-to-week basis. They wanted us to manage this and get completes by DMA, and no variations in sampling should exceed plus or minus 5% within each of the quota groups in the DMA. As you can imagine, it was quite a task, but we didn't back down. We actually said when we first bid for the project, we bid for the whole project, but they selected 2 partners to try to kind of manage the risk, knowing how difficult this project would be. Within the first few weeks, we were awarded the entire project, just given the ability to be able to manage this project so tightly. And I'll share with you some of the things that we did. First and foremost, we knew that there was no panel company that could manage all the sample that was required. So we needed to figure out what panel partners could we include in our solution. And what we did was we selected 15 to 20 partners, and we screened them on a range of different criteria. And you can see some of them here that we put forth. We looked at recruitment methods. We looked at incentive plans, responsiveness in terms of their panel, overall brand reputation, the ability to recontact their respondents in case we needed to do that on a week-to-week basis. We wanted to understand how they defined double opt-in, what truly did the panels have to go through. We also wanted to understand their security protocol and make sure that they were screening appropriately for bots and other type of fraudulent behavior. After we screened and rated each of these panels, not just from looking at our own research, talking to the partners, but also from our wealth of knowledge from working with all these partners over the years, we could at least get an idea of where their strengths and weaknesses lie. And not necessarily overall, but as it related to executing on this project. And so what we did was we actually tiered the panels into 3 different segments. And on a week-to-week basis, we held steady each of these tiers in terms of their composition and what they contributed to each of the completes on a week-to-week basis. So tier 1 tended to be the larger companies and had very similar practices, and that typically was around 50% of the sample composition. Tier 2 was 30%, and tier 3 was 20%. Now, even within the tier, there are panel providers that we had to blend in as well. So it wasn't just holding this composition steady, it was holding within the tier the panel contribution for each player steady as well. We did a test for a period of time just to understand the end-to-end execution. And as I mentioned, we're very big on integrating technology where we can create technology efficiency and reduce the amount of manual intervention. The good news is that we implemented technology solutions that not only helped our client, but helped our panel partners to be able to work with us. So partners that typically would not have been able to participate in a study like this because they didn't have the technical wherewithal or the project execution, we were able to provide hooks into the project, and so they could participate over a period of time with us. We kind of created a super panel, if you will, so all our tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 panels were combined together and were assigned a group variable. As I mentioned, we created technology hooks to allow panel partners that traditionally would not be able to participate. We tested the blending of the 3 tiers to say, was the behavior of the panels as we had planned, and did it work in terms of being able to hold the composition of the panel consistently across week to week? And same within the tier, we tested the sample blending with each tier. The use of technology here was critical in that we were able to set quotas by the 3 tiers and also within the tier for each of the contributions that each group provided. And obviously, we then tested the process end to end. The good news is, when we first started, I can tell you we spent many hours, again, not looking at this as a transactional type relationship, but looking at it more from a solution perspective and saying what needs to happen and where are the needs for customization. And we were able to provide, without any hiccups, a constant, stable sampling solution that allowed our clients to really test out the results of their ad effectiveness project. So with that, those are the 2 case studies I wanted to share with you today. And with that, John, I wanted to hand it back to you.
Thank you, Seema. We do have a couple of questions for you on both your studies here. And I would also encourage anybody in the audience that if you have a question, go ahead and type that question into the question box on the right-hand side of your display panel there. But let me just start with this one, Seema. What are some of the things that you are doing to guarantee or to maintain quality in these studies?
Sure. So I think we can all attest to the need for quality. Every it's almost week to week, month to month, where the vigilance on quality continues to increase, just given the sophistication of fraud that exists. So we've actually have implemented a couple of things that allow us to kind of monitor traffic before it even gets to our servers and ensure that they meet a certain criteria prior to entering the servers to be able to even look at a survey. Once they get into the servers, get to the survey, we actually try to understand where is that traffic specifically coming from, vis-a-vis what the requirement of the study is needed, and a series of other checks. Within survey, if we program the survey, obviously we create the standard red herring questions and monitor open ends closely. We've also implemented a couple of data quality tools that allow us to score and understand different panelists and panel behavior. So we kind of look at it across the spectrum of activity and target solutions for each of those activities.
Okay, Here's another one. I think it's also around quality, but how do you manage such stringent criteria for these projects, given the nature of the scope?
Yeah, I think it's something that number one, we recognize the importance of it, just given that many of us have full service market research backgrounds, and we understand the criticality of making sure that the sample blend and the approach is sound. So researchers just can, feel confident about making good decisions. So kind of that's infused in our thinking. What we then do is we build a lot of customized technology to manage for it. So, as I mentioned in the tracking study, we built that quota feature within tiers and across tiers, and not necessarily having to look at people do not have to manage that or eyeball quotas. They were shut on and shut off automatically. So it's part of the culture, and you'll see a little bit more about Paradigm in the next coming weeks about our orientation around technology, and that's where we think the intersection of the creativity and the technology is crucial to continue to optimize sampling.
Great. Well, now we're starting to get some questions in around the topic of our study or our presentation today, and everybody wants to know about the secret sauce, I guess. So here's your next question, Seema. Do you have any special sauce to handle dropouts during the long-term panel studies?
Well, I think a lot of it is about setting expectations and making sure that consumers or respondents, for that matter, understand what they're getting into. Depending, if it's our proprietary panel, we take great lengths to make sure that we are honest and transparent with them in terms of the time it takes to take a study and the benefit that they have as a result of participating in that study. It sounds so basic, but I guess we can all understand that that does not necessarily happen all the time. When we're using partners, we try to communicate effectively to the partners what the study is going into. A lot of the times we go through the surveys ourselves to make sure we understand what we're asking respondents to do, and even in the invitation to partners, we might recommend indicating what the experience is going to be as they go through the process, and again, setting expectations. That's on one side of it. We all know that sample or panel companies kind of are on the end of the hill, if you will, where we continue to ask our clients and share with them stats and share with them feedback from panelists about experiences that they might have with some of the longer surveys, so they can at least be educated when they make some of those decisions about questionnaire length and questionnaire design. Great.
So another question, and I'm wondering if maybe you could just summarize, the term special sauce as it relates to these studies. Is it more about how you're interacting with the client on the front end as opposed to just being transactional with your engagements, or is there something more to the secret sauce that you're adding here?
Sure. No, I appreciate that. It is 100% making sure that these studies are not dealt with on a transactional manner, and it's more about understanding and truly understanding what the client's pain points are and what they're trying to accomplish. That's one. The other piece is managing respondent expectations and balancing what the client wants versus what we're asking respondents to do. And the third piece I would say is infusing technology into solutions so they're repeatable and scalable. So I would hold all three of those tenets as kind of, three legs to the stool, if you will, in terms of the secret sauce.
Okay. Another question here. What are effective small incentives or feel-good gestures that really go a long way to make respondents feel good about participating without financial investment?
It's a good question. I think a lot of it is just helping respondents understand where their input is, why their input's needed, and sharing with them why it's needed. So we did some research with millennials in the fall as a result of what their voter preferences were and what they were doing to be actively engaged or not actively engaged in the whole political process. And we were really clear in terms of saying this input's needed to help, you know, decision makers and policy makers, I wouldn't say policy, decision makers, to understand what they need to do better. Sounds basic, but I think people do really like to know that their opinion counts, and sharing why their opinion is important in the process. The other piece is we've seen through research on research that respondents really like fun, interesting surveys. Some people say they take surveys to learn about new things and what's coming up in the market. We did a study last summer with our panelists to say what is one of the primary reasons you take surveys. I shouldn't say one of the primary. What are the key reasons you take surveys? Many cited that it's a cool way to learn new things about what's happening in the marketplace. So I think there are opportunities not just to, you know, if we respect the respondent experience and not overtax them and are clear about what they're looking for, about what they're going to experience, there are ways to also give them other benefits outside of monetary incentives to get them to engage.
Okay. What were some of the communication outlets used for the virtual communities, and did participants interact with each other?
That's a great question. So we had a series of different pieces of communication that we tested. What we basically did was, you know, we have, as many panel companies do, we have standardized communication templates for different processes that we want them to engage in. And this time we decided to customize that communication, honestly, make it shorter, less verbose, a little bit more energy to it, and excitement to the communication. It was primarily email, but respectful of the email, not necessarily long paragraphs. First, to answer the second part, we did not have the community interact with each other for this purpose. We have done other communities where people can communicate with each other, but not the one that I presented in the case study.
Okay. Well, it looks like that kind of concludes our Q&A session. But I will ask that if you do have questions, you can see on this thank you slide here that Seema has provided her email address, and I would encourage anybody that has questions specifically about Paradigm's capabilities and some of their other case studies. I'm sure that Seema would be happy to share that with you. So please feel free to send Seema an email and with questions directly, or you can send them to us at surveymagazine.org. Again, I'd like to thank you for joining us. You'll be receiving an email that will alert you to the on-demand status of today's event, so that you can review the material or that you missed, or simply just want to go over it again. So on behalf of our guest, Seema Vasa from Paradigm Sample, as well as the entire team at Paradigm and Survey Magazine, my name is John Lehman, and we wish you a great day. Thank you for attending our presentation today.
Thank you.